again, our help session is today from 1 p.m. At 1 p.m. I'm going to be working out problems from the quiz, and I will record it in post. So I will do that. Your test is Thursday the 26th on Chapter 2, and here's your homework assignments. Okay, the first part, we talked about our parent functions. So be sure you've got all your parent functions. And we talked about how to move right, left, up, down. So now, what we're going to focus on now are operations with functions. Operations with functions. Okay. So we've got f plus g of x equals f of x plus g of x. F minus g of x is the same thing as f of x minus g of x. Okay. This one right here is tricky because sometimes students forget to distribute the negative, because you've got to give the minus sign to all of g of x, and sometimes students forget that. F times g of x is equal to f of x times g of x. F over g of x is equal to f of x over g of x. And when we are doing division, our g of x can't be equal to 0. Now, our x value might be okay being 0. It's the entire function g of x that can't equal 0. So what we're doing here is we're taking functions that were given, and we are adding them, we are subtracting them, we are multiplying, and we are dividing them. Okay? And the functions are given to you. Okay? Still see a couple people writing, so I'm just going to pause. Okay, so here we are going to do this. We are going to take two functions, and we are going to add the functions, and then we are going to subtract the functions. Okay? So my first one is I've got f plus g of x. What that means is I take f of x and I am going to add that to g of x. I'm going to add them together. F of x is 2x plus 1. G of x is x squared plus 2x minus 1. Okay? At this point, I have like terms that I can combine. So I am given x squared. 2x plus 2x is 4x. 1 and negative 1 is 0. So my answer to f plus g of x is x squared plus 4x. Okay? So now we're going to do some subtraction. I have f minus g of x. F minus g of x. So I have f of x minus g of x. Okay? F of x is 2x plus 1. And I am subtracting all of g of x. And this is where students sometimes make mistakes. Right there. You've got to subtract all of x squared plus 2x minus 1. Okay? You've got to subtract all of that. So I've got to distribute that negative. So I end up with 2x plus 1 minus x squared minus 2x. Negative, negative gives me positive. Now I am going to combine like terms. So I have negative x squared. 2x and negative 2x cancel. So then I'm left with 1 plus 1. 3, and we can have a number in there. So, because I have already found f plus g of x, I can plug 3 into my answer for f plus g of x. So I have 3 squared plus 4 times 3. 3 squared plus 4 times 3. What is 3 squared? Okay, what is 4 times 3? Okay, and I get 21. Okay, now I can also, another alternative is I can do f of 3 plus g of 3. Okay, so depending on what I've been asked to do first, you can decide which method is better. So I can find f of 3 by plugging 3 into 2x plus 1. Then I am going to plug 3 in to x squared plus 2x minus 1. And now I simplify. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 6 minus 1. 6 plus 1 is 7 plus 9 is 16 plus 6 is 22 minus 1 is 21. Okay? Now we're going to do f minus g of 2. F minus g of 2. Okay? So I am plugging 2 in for x. That negative, think of it as negative 1 on the outside. So I have negative 1 times 2 squared. In order of operations, do I do multiplication or exponents first? Exponents, okay? So I am going to square the 2 before I deal with that negative. Okay? So then 2 squared is 4. What's 4 times negative 1? So I have negative 4 plus 2. What do I get? Negative 2. Okay? So now, for f minus g of 2, I can also do f of 2 minus g of 2. Okay? F of 2 minus g of 2. So f of 2 is 2x, and I'm plugging 2 in for x, plus 1. What's 2 times 2 plus 1? Good. Now I'm doing g of 2. I've got 2 squared plus 2 times 2 minus 1. So 4 plus 4 minus 1. What's 4 plus 4 minus 1? 7. So what I am actually doing now is I have 5 minus 7. 5 minus 7, which is negative 2. So you can do those either way. You can do them either way. Okay? Can we do multiplication and division? Sure can. Okay. Here I've got f of x is x squared. G of x is 1 minus x. Okay? So we are going to do these the same way that we did addition and subtraction, except we're going to multiply and divide. Okay? So I have f of x times g of x. F of x times g of x. Okay? F of x is x squared, and I am multiplying that times g of x, which is 1 minus x. So I distribute my x squared, and I'm left with x squared minus x to the third. Now, you can leave it like that if you want to. Most of the time, your x to the third comes first. That's just kind of a tradition thing. It's a tradition thing. Okay? So my next one, I have f over g of x. So I'm going to do f of x over g of x. F of x is x squared. G of x is 1 minus x. Okay? Now, for f over g of x, what can x not be? It's okay if x is 0. What's 1 minus 0? What's 1 minus 0? 1. So it's okay to have 1. What can it not be? 1. Because then I have 1 minus 1. So you don't want 0 in the denominator. It's okay if x is 0. The issue is if the denominator is 0. So the value that x cannot be that makes the denominator 0 is 1. That's what x cannot be. Okay? Now, we are going to do f times g of 4. Because I've already done f times g of 4, I'm going to go over here and I am going to plug 4 into f times g of 4. So I have negative 1 times 4 to the third power plus 4 to the second power. What is 4 to the third power? What's 4 times 4 times 4? 64. So then I have negative 1 times 64 plus 16. So negative 64 plus 16, and I get negative 48. Okay? Now, I can also do f of 4 times g of 4. So f of 4 is going to be 4 squared, which is 16. G of 4 is going to be 1 minus 4, which is negative 3. 16 times negative 3 is negative 48. So it doesn't matter which method that we use there. Okay? It doesn't matter. Now I'm looking at f of g over 3. F of g over 3. So I can go back to f of g over 3, and I can plug 3 into my numerator. So I have 3 squared, and then I have 1 minus 3. 3 squared is positive 9. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So my answer to that is going to be 9 over negative 2. I can do f of 3 divided by g of 3. So f of 3 is going to be 3 squared, which is 9. G of 3 is 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. So again, I end up with 9 over negative 2. Okay? So these are operations with functions. These are operations of functions. Okay? Operations of functions are adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. You do have to worry about your domain sometimes if you've got a variable in the denominator. So that is something that you want to be on the lookout for. Okay. We are going to move into composition of functions. And composition of functions is an area that students sometimes struggle. So you want to be sure that you practice composition of functions. You definitely want to make sure you practice composition of functions. Okay, so a couple things that I want to point out. First of all, Do you see that circle right there that's opened? Okay, it does not mean multiplication. Okay? It does not mean multiplication. It means composed. Okay? It means composed. Okay? We read this as F composed of G of X. That's how we read that. F composed of G of X. And when we do that, we replace X in F of X with the entire function of G of X. So I am taking whatever G of X is, and I am plugging it into the X in F of X. Okay? That's what I'm doing. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to use some highlighters. So I've got F composed of G of X. So what that means is I am going to take G of X and I am plugging it in for that X. That's what I'm doing. Okay? That's what I'm doing. So I've got, here we go. 4 minus x squared plus 2. Okay? So I take my G of X and I put it into wherever the X is in my F of X. So this X right here was replaced with this right here. Okay? And then I still have my plus 2. Okay? 4 minus x squared plus 2. Is there anything I can combine?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. So then I'm left with minus x squared plus 6. Okay? Now we are going to do the opposite. We're going to do the opposite of that. This time I have G composed of F. So this time I'm going to take whatever F of X is and I am going to plug it in for G, for the X in G. So I've got G of F of X. Some students like to write it this way. G of F of X. That's the same thing as G composed of F. So instead of F of X, I write what X is. So then I have G of X plus 2. Okay? So wherever there's an X in G of X, what do I put in there? X plus 2. Okay? So I'm going to have 4 minus X plus 2 squared. Now, that sometimes can be a problem for students. You see that minus? We can't distribute that minus until after we FOIL this right here. Okay? We can't distribute the minus until after we FOIL the x plus 2. Okay? So I'm going to FOIL that off to the side. So I've got x plus 2 times x plus 2. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. First, outer, inner, last. Okay? Now, I am subtracting all of this. That is a place that students make mistakes. So be careful with that subtraction sign. We've got to distribute that subtraction sign to everything. Okay? So then I have 4 minus x squared minus 4x minus 4. 4. My 4's cancel. I'm left with negative x squared minus 4x. Okay? Now, the last thing that I want to show you about composition of functions is what happens when I'm putting a number in there. G composed of f of negative 2. Now, we've already found out what G composed of f of x is, so can I plug that negative 2 into this right here? Yes, be careful with your negative signs. Be very, very careful with your negatives. So I have negative negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2. Okay? Students will want to go ahead and cancel this out, but you can't. Okay? Because technically this is negative 1 times negative 2 squared. And what comes first in order of operations? What? The exponents. You got to do the exponents first. What's negative 2 squared? Well, parentheses do come first, but there's nothing in here to simplify. Okay? So, if you don't have anything inside the parentheses that can be simplified, you leave it as negative 2. To do parentheses first, I'd have to have something like 4 minus 2 in there. Okay? Okay. So after grouping symbols, we have to do exponents. So I have negative 2 squared. What's negative 2 squared? Positive 4. So I have negative 1 times positive 4 minus 4 times negative 2. Okay? What's negative 1 times positive 4?
Negative 4.
Negative 4 times negative 2. Plus 8. What's negative 4 plus 8?
4.
Okay, now, I can also do G composed of f of negative 2 from the very beginning. So G composed of f of negative 2 means G of f of negative 2. So I am going to take my negative 2 and I'm going to put it into my f of x. So I've got G of negative 2 plus 2. What's negative 2 plus 2? 0. So then I'm finding G of 0. Okay? And that is 4 minus 0 squared. Okay? Any questions?